to the Two Fun Guys podcast, S'mores. We have a very special guest today, Diana Martinez.
Yes, Diana Martinez. Thank you,
Diana Martinez, the business of podcasting. So we met the other day. I found you on socials and you made a post. Are you interested in making money from podcasting? I think that was the post you made, right?
That was the post.
And, you know, me and Tony have this dope podcast and we're growing it, but I'm so curious about the business side and how do you even begin to make money? So this episode's really for anyone just starting out. Like I have a couple clients, training clients who are going to start podcasts, and I get questions all the time from different people I meet. They're like, well, what should I get in this and that? I think this is, overview of what you should think about when starting, long-term perspective too, and then people that maybe have 50 to 100 subscribers who, how do you get paid from a sponsor or a guest? Or what are all the different options and how to think of this long term if you want to run it as a business. And even if it's just a passion, you should still think of it as a business if you want to keep doing your passion. You have to, you shouldn't just keep shelling out money. So, Diana Martinez, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Brent. Tony, thank you for inviting me, guys. I'm excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm passionate about the podcast world, the content creation, the creator economy. And I've spent so many years in the industry. I've seen firsthand how you can grow in this industry. And I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background, because you have a very interesting background.
Well, yes, I started as a creator myself, and that gave me a first-hand look as what it takes to grow in the industry. And then I started working for CEOs, founders in the podcast industry, and then I realized that I wanted to make a bigger impact. So I'm running my agency now, where I connect brands and talent to create meaningful impact and growth. And also I am a part of ATX Creators, where I work with creators, amazing creators, every single day. And yeah, I think the podcast is booming right now. The content creation and the creator economy, it's growing. It's a billionaire industry. And I think it's important for creators, for podcasters to take advantage of it. And while doing impact, making so much money.
Aside from the booming growth that the industry is having, what makes you personally so passionate about the podcasting and content industry?
I remember I started as a creator in 2019, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And I always say this, podcasts changed my life, because I was, as I said, full-time mom, and I didn't know what to do with everything that was going on my life at that moment. I mean, I have to be super transparent with you guys. I was in the middle of a divorce or trying to make that change in my life. And I was like, what can I do? I have like 2 small children. And this is makes me feel very vulnerable, but I think it's important because I was like, okay, I need to do something. So I was offered a radio show at the time, but I couldn't accept the offer because I have my 2 children. And I said, okay, I'm gonna launch a podcast because I want to tell my story. I want to find role models out there of women doing great things, achieving great things. And so I did. I launched the podcast and I felt so empowered. And you asked me, why the podcast, why to be a content creator? Because that's the realization that every story is worth to be told. Mm-hmm. And there's always someone out there willing to listen to your story. And that is like mind-blowing to me.
That's amazing. Is this before or after you were managing like 150
That was
podcasters?
before. I started as a single mom, as a stay-at-home mom, and then I was a single mom. And I started the podcast, and I was so passionate about it. I started reaching out, because I don't have any fear to reach out to people.
Is it still up? Can people listen to it?
No. Oh. It was Un Café con Diana, and it was the first Latino podcast from Austin, from
Cool.
the first Latino-led podcast. And it was an amazing journey. And now I'm about to launch another one. But at that time, I started like connecting with people, with stakeholders of the industry, founders, CEOs. I launched a membership for podcasters. It was called Los Podcasters. It was a mix of, it was aiming the Latino emerging podcasters back then. And I started trying to bring value to the membership. And since I was starting out as well, I was reaching out to the CEOs, to the founders from different podcast networks or different providers in the space, and they were coming to the membership online, of course, and give to the members consulting and different content or how to professionalize the craft, right? And that was a moment when I realized that I could like be on my own. So I got divorced and I launched my agency. It was called Los Podcasters at that time, and I was focusing on content acquisition and strategic partnerships. That is very new. That was very new back then, because content acquisition at the time was starting out as a department in different in different entertainment companies. So I was having different clients like Sonoro, which later hired me full time, and I was working with them. Sonoro is the number 4 podcast network in the world, and it's amazing. It's an amazing company, and I was there for about 2 years, managing 150 podcasters.
Wow.
And yes,
You personally managing 150 different
of course
podcasts.
we were a team,
You have a
right?
team,
But
right?
I was
Wow.
I was the podcast relations director at that company, so I was managing or overseeing the management of those 150 podcasts and everything from acquire the podcast or the content, managing the relationship, and overseeing all the campaigns that those podcasters were participating in.
So you've seen pretty much everything there is to see in the podcast
Yes,
industry.
I have to tell you, yes, because that way I can understand the struggles, the pain points of a creator. I understand how difficult it is for the creators or the podcasters to reach out to brands, or they don't know how to handle when they are reached out. I've seen what the agencies and clients, I mean brands, are looking for when they're trying to land a campaign. I've seen what is where's the missing link when between a campaign that works, the campaign that doesn't. I mean, I think I've seen it all, and I love the process so much that I'm here because of that. I want to share whatever I've been learning, because I think I'm learning every single day a new thing. I learn from you guys a lot, and that's my mission. I think my mission is to speak and to say everything I've learned and share it with content creators and podcasters out there to make them feel empowered about that their craft can be a way of living.
Mic drop.
Yeah, for real.
Absolute mic drop.
So, like, looking over 150 podcasts, what are themes or trends that you see, like common mistakes that podcasts are making, that you can come in as like a quick win to start getting some traction?
Mindset.
Mindset, okay.
Totally.
What about it?
And this sounds very cliche, maybe, but everything starts in your mind. I can tell you the biggest podcasters out there have so many fears about being rejected. That's the number 1 fear, not being liked. And I think I understand, right? That is human nature. We want to be validated, we want to be approved, we want to be liked, right? But I think when it comes to podcasters, content creators, that fear of being rejected prevents them a lot from reach the next level, because they want to stay in their comfort zone. They sometimes, of course, there's those creators that we all know, right? Like Joe Rogan. They are like
Who?
Joe Rogan.
I've never heard of her.
Exactly. Like they are themselves. They talk about what they want to talk. But some of the creators that are in the verge of taking that leap, they are afraid to do it. They don't want to do or say anything controversial because they are afraid of not being liked or not being approved, or close the doors with certain brands. It's gonna happen. When you are true to yourself, you're gonna filter your audience. When you are true to yourself, you're not gonna be able to work with every single brand. But the audience is gonna be filtered. The audience is gonna be more loyal to you because it's gonna be like raving fans. And of course, maybe you're gonna have less deals, but more meaningful and more money involved. So that the mindset.
Wow.
Very interesting. So let's go to the mindset of someone just starting or wanting to start. What is some of your advice for those individuals who want to be successful, or just some things that they should know?
There's more like 45 millions of content creators doing it professionally. Okay, there's more than 200 million creators out there, but 45 million are doing it professionally. So I think the difference, or the number one mind hack, it's believing that you are different for a reason. I mean, I think maybe to me as an immigrant, as a Latina, of course I know I'm different for a reason. I have to embrace that from like the beginning of my the first day I got here to the U.S. But for someone that is not a part of a minority, maybe it's like hard to understand what his differences are or what makes you unique, and take advantage of it and developing those differences more instead of trying to blend in with the majority of people.
Yeah, podcast is interesting. When I first started, it's getting yourself on camera the first time, like filming myself, and then going into a studio the first time. It's such a cool experience because it's such personal growth. It's like it grows you so much, because in the beginning you're like thinking about what you're saying so much, worrying about what people will think. And I don't know about you, but I don't think about it at all anymore.
Yeah, you start to become numb to it to a degree. There's still it's in the back of your head. I don't think it ever really goes away. Like, you're always aware that you're being filmed, recorded on camera, which is probably a healthy thing to remember.
Yeah.
So you don't
Censor
go
yourself
balls to the wall.
a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't say what you say at home by yourself. But yeah, the first time is definitely nerve-wracking. And I used to be an actor, and this is still, like, it's still very different because you have a script.
Exactly.
You have something that you've prepared. Now you sit down and you just have an organic conversation. It's a completely different ballgame.
Totally. And for you guys, what's your biggest obstacle right now?
I would love to do it full time, and in order to do it full time, we'd have to make money from it doing full time. And I think this is kind of the point of the episode too, is how do you do that? Like, I don't know, because there's so many options you see podcasters posting Patreons, people, podcasts you listen to like Rogan or Huberman, they do their ads, but how do you make a deal with ads? How do you present a services sheet or know how many you should do? And I don't think there's any information out there about that. Unless you really look, but I mean, I'm all over the internet reading and listening to everything, and I'm still confused about it.
What would be your number one question regarding how to make money? What is your number one question?
Number one question to how to make money? I guess, how do you, so many questions.
I think,
Yeah.
let me take the baton. I think it's not just one question, because I think we know what to do, right? We know.
Do we?
We know. Well, she just told us. She told us a second ago. So since she said it, we know what to do. But it's the how behind it, right? So it's like build a brand. First, you have to have a brand. I think what you said about the mindset thing is important, because I don't think we had bad mindsets about it. I just think we were looking at it the wrong way.
How were we looking at it?
Huh?
How were we looking at it?
We were looking at it as, well, this is just a fun thing. We never really went into this thinking we're going to make a bunch of money and retire on podcasting. That was never the goal. It was come in and let's just do this for fun, meet cool people, network.
Sure.
We just enjoy it. Like, we genuinely enjoy doing this. So that's what got us into it. And we had the mindset of we're just doing it for fun, and if it makes money, it makes money. But then you start to realize, well, if you really care about it and you really want to do it to the best of your abilities, then working your day job is not benefiting you in the thing that you're passionate about. So that was a big mindset shift. To your point, mindset being the number one thing you have to switch. Now we're realizing, okay, if we want a podcast to the best of our abilities, we now have to make it profitable. So then we can focus our attention on it. So I think that leads into the first question is now how do we start the first step in beginning the profitability journey?
For example, I think I'm going to talk about success stories, of course,
Okay.
right? So let's say a creator has a podcast or has a social first, and then they have a podcast. You can monetize right away in an indirect way. If you have a course or if you have or if you're a professional, you can use your podcast as a part of your funnel, right? So you can use your podcast to create more awareness of your business, of whatever you do.
Right. It becomes like a client acquisition tool. It's just marketing.
Exactly. Part of your funnel, of your sales funnel. But if you want to make money directly from the podcast, I think it's important to see what products you can develop around it. Of course, there's the ads side of the monetization, right? Everybody is talking about the ads. There's the dynamic inserted ads. The dynamic inserted ads that are, you don't have anything to do with the brand. You don't negotiate anything. It's just, and it's a game of volume. The more downloads you have, the more you can earn from dynamic insertion ads, okay? This is important because people, okay, where do I get those dynamic inserted ads? You have to be a part of a network. Spotify has their own dynamic inserted ads and they can pay you. It's based on CPM. This is kind of tricky because it's very technical. And to be honest with you, if your podcast is not like 1 million downloads a month, you're not gonna earn almost anything from dynamic inserted ads.
Is that like when you're watching a podcast and then just an ad pops up?
Exactly. And they are paid by CPM, cost per mile. And the average cost per mile on audio, it's from 13, 20, 25, 45 per 1,000 downloads, depending on the category. For example, finance, it's $45 per mile. Or, am I explaining myself?
So for every, say it one more time.
Yes. Finance is $45 CPM, which means $45 per each 1,000 downloads you have
Got it.
on your show. Okay?
Okay. So don't focus on that unless you're just crazy big.
Exactly.
And,
Do your math. If you have 17,000 downloads a month, you're gonna it's gonna be 17 by 45 if you're in finance. That's what you're gonna earn from dynamic inserted ads. Of course, it's more complicated than that because you have different slots. You can have from 1 to 6 or 8 slots that can be filled with dynamic ads in your episode. This is really confusing. We can do something for your audience if you want, and they can download a guide for dynamic inserted ads. But for for a podcaster starting out or a medium podcast, really isn't not worth it. It's not worth it. Of course, it's there, and you cannot say no, right, to any money that is coming from your podcast. It's great, but it's going to be so little. Next is the ad reads. Ad reads. You connect with a brand, and that brand wants a campaign in your podcast. Could be sometimes or usually brands starting buying out test buys. So they want 1 or 2 or 3 ad reads on your show. So they started paying out very little just to see how it goes, right? It's usually, you can set the prices for your ad reads. If you are a small podcast, between 5,000 or 10,000, and depending on the notoriety of the host too, you can charge $300, $150, $1,000. It depends on a series of factors, and usually you should not focus just on your downloads. Focus on your impressions, how many impressions you have a month. And impressions is not the numbers that it's on your Spotify account. Let's not make that mistake. what the brands or agencies are looking for is the amount of impressions you can deliver in a month or in a certain period of time for that campaign, which is combining the numbers of downloads, views on YouTube, even your social. Sometimes they're going to ask you for that, and basically those.
Are they looking at the other platforms? So looking at YouTube, Apple, Spotify.
Of course,
all of that too?
audio is all them combined.
Okay.
Spotify, Apple Podcast. So if you want to approach to a brand or is approaching you, make sure not to give them just your downloads, but give them your total impressions in a month. That is powerful. And why it's important, because I think I have so many information to give you guys. So
Keep
You
it
got plenty
coming.
of time.
it's important because if you focus on downloads, remember that you cannot use paid media on Spotify or Apple Podcast, but you can use paid media on YouTube. So if you offer the client certain amount of impressions total, views, downloads, if you for some reason are not getting to those impressions, you can use paid media and reach those impressions. It's kind of complicated, but it's how it works. And another important thing is that if you use those impressions, you can use the client's money to pay for the media to promote your podcast. You're gonna earn that promotion. You're gonna gain that visibility and reach by the paid media, and also you are getting to those goals for the brand. So that's why it's so important to use or to sell your content by impressions and not just downloads. Am I explaining myself?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, really, the name of the game is building impressions.
Exactly. That's why your content should be everywhere. Sometimes the creators, and I love that question, sometimes creators think, oh, if I put my podcast and then I put it on YouTube, I'm gonna cannibalize my downloads, or people are not gonna listen to my show and they're gonna watch it on YouTube, but it's totally different audiences. So you need to diversify that.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. People go to different platforms.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're never gonna migrate someone that is hardcore Spotify to YouTube and vice versa. They use their platform of their choice.
And when you say promoting, right, so you're starting to make a little bit money from ad reads, and you're trying to promote on YouTube to grow impressions, how specifically are you recommending that?
Well, for that you have to talk to a ad operations, especially someone that does like Google ads or YouTube ads, because it depends on so many factors, like what's your audience, what do you want to do, if you want to use retargeting. There's a lot in that is not my expertise. But yeah,
I don't think I've ever messed around with YouTube ads or even thought about it, really. Interesting. Okay. So much information. it's amazing. So focused on building impressions, how do you even begin to approach, so say you're young creators like us, like young as in the podcast.
Don't
is
pretend
young.
you're young, Brent.
young podcast, and I think where I get confused is I just kind of freestyle it, like, hey, we could charge you this much and we'll read 3-4 ads or whatnot. I really don't know what I'm offering or what the price ranges are, or even how to take those impressions and offer them. So I think understanding how to even begin that.
Okay, begin with knowing your numbers. Of course, you need a one-pager or media kit. That's super important. You'd be surprised how many creators I'm talking with lately, they don't have the media kit or the one-pager because it's been very organic for them to be approached by brands or local businesses. So they're doing it in a very informal way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to take your podcast or your content creation to the next level, you need to professionalize your operation, right? Treat your podcast not just as a side project or your hobby. There's nothing wrong with it if you want to do it, but if you want to monetize, you need to treat it as an enterprise. So create your media kit or your presentation with the bio, the host's bio, the host personal social media numbers, and then the podcast numbers. Important. What is always what you have to put in the media kit or one pager for your show? It's the amount of impressions for each month, monthly impressions, the breakdown male female of your audience, the top 3 age groups of your audience, the top 3 locations, countries, and pretty much that. And I think if you have that, and if you are approached by a brand, or if you want to pitch yourself, that's going to open you a lot of doors, and it's going to set you apart from the rest of the creators that they don't have it.
I love that. So if someone's, they say they only have they're just starting their podcast, they only have 1,000 followers for their own personal Instagram. They're just starting out. I imagine some thoughts would be if they're trying to make money, there's no way I'm going to be able to grow. Or what should be even the first goal impression-wise, or how many episodes should someone produce before they even thinking about putting this one pager together and approaching brands?
I would say, Brett, since day one, because that makes you shift your mindset. And we were talking about mindset before. If you don't put it in a way that it's exciting you and exciting someone else, you're not gonna believe it. You're not gonna believe that you're doing this as a business. You're gonna be like, oh, this is my hobby. Oh, I can charge you this, or I can charge you that. Of course, if you have someone on your side that can help you out, or a seasoned creator, or someone that you can go to for advice, do it. Of course, there's always the agencies that are trying to recruit talent, right? To represent the talent, but you can do it yourself, because it's a fact. Some of those agencies won't even reach out to a small creator, or they have their own standards or filters. They want people with 30K plus followers. Every agency is different, but you can do it on your own. I mean, you can be your self-advocate, and I also believe in community. Get together with other like-minded creators, and I think that's important, because you guys are amazing. I don't know if you guys are getting together with other podcasters, if you guys are doing collaborations. That is so huge. The number one strategy to grow a podcast is to be advertised or announced in another podcast, because the audience is already in that space. You don't need to migrate. You were talking about it. You don't need to migrate someone from social to listen to the podcast. It's people that is in the podcast. So cross promotion is huge to grow your numbers on audio. Also, of course, YouTube. So cross
Would that be
promo.
like someone who has a podcast? We have a podcast. You do an episode together and you kind of post both on your platforms?
That's one way.
Okay.
And that one, it's the less common, because there's a lot of work involved, right? Like create the episode and publish on both feeds. The most common is 30 seconds of promo of your show at the beginning of another podcast, and vice versa. That's super, super
So you just
effective.
trade with another generally about the same size podcast. You give each other an ad read, essentially.
Exactly. And what you can do is you can exchange impressions. Like literally, okay, I can give you 1,000 impressions, regardless the size of the podcast. You just exchange impressions. We can exchange 1,000 impressions.
How do you know how many impressions? Is it just based on the data that you...
Exactly, based on the data. That's why it's important to monitor your data, so you can know how many impressions you can offer in case of these collaborations. So, okay, let's say one podcast have 10,000 downloads a month and the other has 5,000. It's gonna take more for the 5,000 a month to deliver those impressions. So, I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So yeah, it's so straightforward. I can give you 1,000 impressions. You can give me 1,000. Whenever we reach to those, this is over, right?
Okay, so it's doing ad reads for your own podcast and somebody else's podcast. It's not necessarily going on someone else's podcast?
You can do that too. That's called guesting in each other's show. You can do Cross promo. You can do guesting in each other's shows. You can do other collaborations on social or doing events together. I think that is something that small creators are not exploring yet. They think this is just for the big podcasters like Alex Cooper, like Joe Rogan, but no. I mean, small creators can create so much impact by doing those collaborations and making waves in their own communities and being recognized. And that's when I'm trying to shift in the creators that I've been talking to lately. Is okay, if you're a podcaster, you can have so much influence. On your audience. There's a study saying that 71% of the podcast audience trust the host more than any other entertainer or host of traditional media.
Wow.
So that's huge, and that's why the advertisers know that. The number one advertiser or spender in the podcast environment is Amazon. Amazon doesn't need customers.
Yeah.
They own the market share, but it's just because they need the awareness, be top of mind of the audience, and they know podcasters really have a deep influence on their audience.
Yeah, the media is moving away from mainstream, from news, from all of that, and now people are getting their information from podcasts because you finally get a long form piece of information from someone that you want to hear from, like politicians or whatever. Now they're finally spending time, and people are getting their news and their topical updates from podcasts. Even if it's just a clip, they're just scrolling. They're like, oh, this is how I learn my information of the world.
Exactly.
I'm not going to CNN or Fox News or any of that because now we know it's all biased, it's all bullshit.
I don't watch TV, I think, since I started podcast. Promise you.
Mm-hmm. Is there a minimum threshold for size, whether it's follower count or downloads or impressions, that you would think someone needs to hit before they can start focusing on monetizing?
Seriously, I don't think so. It's about how you negotiate.
Right.
Promise. How you sell yourself. How you put yourself out there for brands as a strong voice for the community you represent, whichever. If you're Latino or if you're a white guy talking to other white dudes, whatever it is.
So most podcasts.
Exactly. And exactly. I mean, there's no threshold, to be honest with you. Of course, for big brands or advertisers or spenders like BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a huge advertiser in the podcast world.
It's like AG1, BetterHelp,
Shopify.
Shopify, yeah.
Yeah.
The big three.
Exactly. And Amazon, maybe we don't know, I haven't heard as much.
Yeah, I don't really hear it.
Right? But I think it should be in a niche that I haven't listened lately, but they are the top one spender in podcast advertisement. That tells you something. So I think it's important for you to not disqualify yourself just because you don't have certain amount of followers. And the point is, okay, of course, those advertisers are looking for reach, right? But not as much, because remember there's two types of campaigns, awareness and conversion. Awareness is just because they want to hit the masses and be top of mind. And conversion, they want to hit a certain niche and convert the audience on click links, on subscriptions, purchases. So those type of campaigns can go to smaller creators because they know they have a loyal audience. Even though it's not thousands or millions, it's a loyal audience. So I think it's important about just put your media kit together, your one-pager, reach out to brands, or get someone to help you. There's always a seasoned creator willing to help others. Promise.
That's awesome. Before we get a little deeper into ads, for people beginning their podcast, of all the podcasts you've managed and seen and watched and trends, is there something people need to think about in structuring their show, or niches or topics, or being too broad? Or as long as you have the mindset and you're just authentic and let it develop, that's fine to be successful?
I think the latter. Because if you are enjoying something, you're going to make it grow.
So you don't need to think about it too much and be like,
I
should do this
so.
topic, I should do that topic.
I don't think so, because the creators, the most successful creators that I've worked with, and one of them is the number 11 podcast in the world. It's called Relatos de la Noche, and
What is that?
it's in English is Tales of the Night. It's a horror podcast. You might think, who's gonna listen to a horror podcast?
Women love horror podcasts.
Of course, right? But you wouldn't think back then when he started that that would be so huge as it is now. But he stayed true to himself. Uriel, he's an amazing creator. And of course, and there's the other side of the spectrum. Joe Rogan, he's so broad. He talks about anything that interests him, right? But again, it's something that interests him. And he's so true to himself, he's controversial, and he doesn't care. And look at him now. And he started out as a Fear Factor,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah, he was an actor and then was on Fear Factor and was a fighter.
Exactly. There you go. So it doesn't matter as long as you're passionate about it, as long as you are like willing to talk about this 24/7. Just do it.
I think, too, and that's such a good point. Like, just be authentic, but also it's okay to start messy. I think people get so bogged down by everything has to be perfect when they launch.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's ever seen the first Joe Rogan podcast episode. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
It's funny. It's like him on a MacBook camera, and it's like him and I think Red Band, and they're just filmed like an hour or 2 hours of just talking, but it's super grainy. It's terrible. Honestly, there's like snow special effects in the background, like the
Yeah, it's
like
so
the
crazy
video
looking.
is like
It's so
special effects
crazy.
on it, and they're just it's just super low quality and fun. And now it's the #1 podcast in
Exactly.
the world. Like
In
it's
the
okay to just be
world.
messy and not know what you're doing and just get started.
Yes, I think that's the number one thing, and I'm including myself. And I've talked to you guys about it. I'm about to launch my new podcast, and I've been like waiting for the right lens, waiting for, because now that I feel like I know a lot about the podcast, I cannot launch anything but perfect. To be honest with you, that's been my
Got to keep going up.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to do it like great, but I mean, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna do it like from a park because I want to capture the essence of Austin, and I'm gonna do it whatever. I don't care. But that takes a lot. We always want the best. Of course, I appreciate that from people that I work with. But at the end of the day, it's about being authentic, being genuine, and put your message out there in the format that works for you. Long, short, messy, structured, whatever you want to do, just do it. Promise. Just get into the pool. You're gonna learn how to swim, float, whatever.
My client, Lauren Bostic, she has a podcast, and something she always told me that I like to think about, and that's like with us, it's like, let's just do this for fun. Don't try to put too much pressure on it right away, even though you're saying it's still good to do that. She would always say, just get 200 episodes under your belt. Just produce 200. And I think it doesn't need to be this specific number, but it's like, just get a bunch done. Just like work towards a goal before you try to think about it too much. Because if you're like, what should I do for 1 and 2? No one's listening.
True.
No one's listening to your episodes
And you
yet.
also have
So
like,
don't worry about it.
If you have a plan and you go into it with that plan, as you learn along the way,
Yeah.
your plan's gonna crumble.
Oh,
like
yeah.
because you're gonna be a completely
Exactly.
different person as you start doing more
course.
episodes.
And you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to change everything along the way. Because at the end of the day, it has to be true to yourself. It has to be fun. Fun. I think that's the most important thing, and we forget about it. In life, not only podcasts, not only your content creation. Everything has to be fun, in a way.
Yeah, if you just did it because you wanted to escape your job and make money, well, now you just made a job where you're being filmed. If it's not fun, then what was the point?
Yeah, don't build this like whole empire thing around you and you're like, oh, now I'm stuck in
Now
this
you're
thing
just a
I built.
slave to this new thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's about having fun. It's about being yourself. Put your message out there because your story could be the first step to change someone else's story. And that is so powerful. The
Yeah.
community that you guys are building around your show, it's huge. The amount of responses, I've seen everything that you guys are doing. You guys are great because you are just you guys. And people love that. People connect with that authenticity. People need that kind of being aspirational enough. Like, oh, look at these guys. They're in front of a camera. They're doing this something awesome. But aspirational enough, but relatable enough to feel like if they can do it, I can do it too. That is powerful. And I think you guys are killing it, and I love seeing you guys.
She's the best hype.
Growing.
I feel
Oh my
so
God.
hyped.
Yeah, just
So
bring
hyped.
her with us everywhere.
I mean, that's the thing that motivates me the most is, I mean, I'm sure you get these too, but we'll get texts from people that are just like, oh, I love this last episode you did. I really resonated with
Like,
it.
I thought no one listened to it.
Yeah, we joke. We'll talk about like our one listener. We joke
Yeah.
about like
One of my clients, she's like obsessed and sends us like a 3-minute voice text review of each episode and just hypes us
it's
up.
great. But yeah, it's like just those little random texts of
That's
somebody
amazing.
resonating makes all the difference, because we didn't get into this to be famous or anything like that. But it's just so nice to know that people are resonating, and that's super motivating to keep pushing, keep doing it more.
Yeah, I love doing it because, like on YouTube back in the day when it first started, you would see so many people doing interesting, different things. Where when I was really young, you didn't really have any of that, and it opens people's minds to new possibilities of your health or possibilities in your life, or it's just a way of educating yourself, growing, inspiring. It's just very interesting. And I think everybody honestly should have a podcast if it's something they want to do. I don't think there will ever be too many podcasts. I think there should always, if someone wants to start it, they shouldn't get into their mindset of being like, oh, there's too many, or oh, there's so many people in this realm or this realm. Every person is so uniquely different. And the proof is, look at TikTok. There's so many people blowing up on TikTok that just are the most random, interesting people, like a grandpa in Louisiana that has 4 teeth and he likes painting butterflies or whatever. It's like, because his unique personality and authenticity, it will never like be saturated. I don't think so, because you'll have people with very unique interests and they'll become more and more unique.
That's also a dumb way to think about it, like the saturation. Oh, I'm not going to write a book. There's enough books.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's so many books.
Nobody
write the
has
book,
said
dude.
that. Nobody
Yeah.
has said that.
Yeah, why is it only podcasting?
Exactly. I mean, everybody has a podcast. That's awesome. That's the way it should be. Everybody has to have that outlet or medium or business, whatever you want to do with your content. It's valid, but you need to. It's better say. How's they saying? It's better say. I remember that What was it? The saying?
Ask for forgiveness? Or?
Something like that. Yeah. You never have to. I mean, you should always pursue your dreams, bigger, small. You just do it.
Okay, so we've created a one-pager.
It's important, super important.
So we created that. We know that our options are the first ad thing. I can't remember what it was called.
Dynamic
insertion.
which
Dynamic
is not
insertion.
sexual, everybody. You might think it is, but get your minds out of the gutter. It's actually a marketing tool.
We can call it the
And then you
DIA.
have, okay, so you have that. Then you have ad reads. So this is where a brand maybe you like, blah, blah, you read ads.
Exactly.
Like you hear Joe Rogan or whoever do all the time. And then what other options are there? I think you were telling me about Patreon. Like, I want to kind of lay this all out.
Think about your audience, and I ask you that question. I'm pretty sure you receive DMs and texts asking you for something like, hey, do you have any courses, or do you guys do live events? Do you always have those people asking you questions about things that they would like that they can easily be products, right? So think about your ebook. Your ebook is something, right? Think about the creator. You guys are the creators at the center of this 360 environment, where you should be, if you want, of course, you should be feeling the needs of your audience. If your audience wants to see you in person, you can do live events. I think that's something overlooked by so many creators. People love to see their creators live. For you or for me, should be like, oh, why? Why do they want to go and see me record my podcast? I mean, it's so, right? Simple, but they love that. So live events, in podcast live recording, also retreats. People love going on retreats, and you guys are amazing at creating community. I mean, that would be awesome. Another thing it's important for me to note is that the podcasters sometimes think that working with brands it's gonna come just by itself. You need to reach out to brands. I want to make emphasis, and I want to emphasize on that. Reach out to brands. But if you have your media kit in your one pager, it's way easier than if you just DM a person, right? Email, send your media kit. Hey, I love to make a collaboration. This is the breakdown of my audience. Bam, bam, bam. Like 80% male. I don't know, like the ages, the top 3 locations. Reach out and be creative. What I do all the time is I already propose something. I have an idea. For example, I pitch myself for a campaign in Mexico, and my campaign was called Visit Mexico. So I reach out to all the airlines and hotels and interesting places in Mexico City, and now I have a campaign. Nobody reached out to me. Nobody looked for me because I was working behind the scenes these whole years, and now again I'm working as a creator as well, and nobody will reach out, right? Nobody knew that I was doing content creation, so I pitched myself. So don't be afraid to do that. I mean, I think, and as the founder of Spanx, her name slipped my mind right now, but she's amazing.
Yeah,
and
Jesse Itzler's wife.
Exactly,
Right?
and she goes, people ask me, how do you enter to Neiman Marcus? And she goes, because I emailed them. That easy.
Yeah.
And so don't be afraid. And you can start with your local businesses. Start with local businesses, and then you can get the confidence to go higher. And maybe after 1, 2, 3 collaborations with small businesses or local businesses, you have the portfolio to reach out to bigger brands, if that's what you want. Because working with local creators, local businesses, it's great too. Hyper-local creators, hyper-local podcasts are super trendy right now. Hyper-local. People, of course, are aiming to the masses, but as I said, a lot of the campaigns right now are aiming to niche down to certain demographics. So if you're a local creator, local podcaster, take advantage of it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. They say a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So you have to stay open, you got to reach out.
Exactly.
And we've had some companies reach out to us for sponsorship, but we also, turn them down because our mindset was we didn't want to sell out. That was kind of our thing. It's like we'd rather, if we're going to be sponsored by someone, we really want to be in line with that company, right? And we're like, we don't really give a shit about this product that
Of course, that's
sent it.
important.
So, but the reaching out thing that you brought up kind of takes that away, because if you're reaching out, then there's obviously some kind of connection. Like you want to be sponsored by that
Absolutely.
brand. It's not just whoever comes to you.
Exactly. And another thing that I'd like to add, don't wait until you're working with the brand to shout out the brand. Promise. That is huge. And let me tell you why. When I was working with this company, pitching or overseeing the campaigns with creators, I was vetting the creators, right? Like, okay, I have, let's say, BetterHelp. BetterHelp wants to work with you guys. And my number one question was, have you ever talked about BetterHelp on your show? And she goes, this podcaster, yes, I was talking about it, I have it. It's episode 42. So I sent that to the brand, and they, like that,
Wow.
move forward with her. Because she was a customer, or she was aligning with the brand beforehand, and that is so authentic, and brands are looking for that. So if you're planning on working with certain brands, or you have your dream brands, start shouting them out. Start using them. Put in your stories. Put in your highlights. So if you're working with an agent, or you or yourself, you can go, hey, and by the way, here's the link for the story that I posted 6 months ago about you guys, because I love you guys. So that is huge.
So people might be listening and say, but Diana, how do I know how much to charge or ask for?
That's tricky. That's tricky because it's a combination of things, as I said before. It's a combination of your total impressions, but also it's important the notoriety of the host. I'm not saying famous is the host, how influential is the host. Of course, it has to be with the followers the host has, but most important is how influential their voice is in a certain community or in the certain demographics that the brand is looking for. So if you are, let's say, this is like very extreme, but let's say you want to work with BetterHelp and you have openly talked about depression and the people know your journey. If you have a small amount of impressions a month and you have like 1,000 followers on Instagram as a host, but you have that huge connection with the company's purpose, of course you can charge whatever other huge creator is charging. You can negotiate. That gives you a negotiation room, right? Room to negotiate. So, for example, I know you guys want numbers.
I know it's hard to
It's
say.
hard,
Yeah, because you have to know your numbers too.
But I'm going to
understand.
give you an example. There's a show in California. They're small, relatively small. They have around 10,000 downloads or impressions a month. Okay? They have audio and video. That's important. They have YouTube. But they are super into politics. They are into the social causes. So they charge around $300 or $400 per ad read, mentioning the brand one time for 30 seconds. So you have an idea. They're not huge, but they are very identified and connected with the cause, with social justice and immigration, but not because of the category, but how connected you are with a cause or with a group of people. That gives you a leverage. So, but remember about the CPM. You can check the cost of CPM for each category. You can find it online. It's easy to find it, but it's usually, for example, YouTube pays $3 CPM. That's flat rate, unless it's finance. So everyone over there like doing finance, you have to launch a podcast because it's so well paid. So between,
Do you know what it is? It's different than $3?
it's 45.
Wow.
Content about credit cards is $45 to CPM.
Huh.
Yes. So CPM varies from category to category.
Why is that? Do you know why they pay more for? And also, that's question one. But question two: what are the other high-paid industries?
That is the highest.
Okay.
Finance. The others are pretty much average between 16, 25.
Huh. Do you know why finance is the most sought after?
Of course, because it's a niche that is looking for credit card information. They're mostly ready to invest their money or commit with a bank. They're looking for this kind of information. So yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. So there's different categories. You can check all those categories on the IAB website. They don't have the CPMs there, but you can easily find, just Google the podcast CPM cost in America, because it varies, of course, from country to country.
Where do you think the podcast industry is going?
I think the podcast
Next 5
industry-
years, where do you see it? Because I think you were telling me when we were at our meeting, it's just starting to blow up in Mexico.
It is.
And I imagine it's going to continue into other countries as well. It seems like U.S. is kind of the main place where it kind of began. Would
Yes,
you say?
of course, it's the leading market. The U.S. is the leading market for podcasts, and all the rest of the world is modeling what U.S. is doing. So, as I said before, for example, the dynamic insertion ads started in the U.S. and then we're expanding to different markets like Brazil, Japan, Germany. Mexico was recently getting on board with those dynamic inserted ads. So, of course, the U.S. is the big player, right? And all legacy media companies working in the podcast space are based in the U.S., like iHeart, like Acast, Amazon Music, Sonoro, which is the number 4 that I was working for before, that I love Sonoro so much. I learned so much from them. So I think the podcast industry goes into, or the trends will be shorter episodes, but of course, Joe Rogan can talk for 4 hours and everybody's gonna listen to to him. But shorter episodes, fiction is getting wild right now, and it's
What do you mean fiction?
fictional podcasts like these,
Like storytelling?
like to put it in simple words, like an audiobook, but with all the effects,
Wow, that's
actors,
kind of cool.
sound,
Yeah.
like this
Like old
sound
radio shows.
design. Exactly.
I
like,
used to listen to one a few years ago, and it was like this sci-fi. It was an improvised sci-fi show, and so they had like a general plot idea, but then the actors would improvise the show, and then they would add in sound effects, and it
That
was
is
so entertaining.
Wow, that's
I loved it.
awesome.
Yeah, it was called
Amazing.
Mission to Zix. It was
Yeah, because you're
super
like, how
fun.
are they making these sounds and stuff?
Yeah.
Really, right?
Yeah, exactly.
that is
They
amazing.
had different voices and everything, and you feel because you just close your eyes, and since there's no visual,
You can really visualize.
you're the TV, like you're creating
Sure.
whatever you want
That is amazing.
based on the sounds and the voices.
I love it.
Of course.
I feel like it's better for your brain than it's just
It's
watching
amazing.
a screen.
So sound design, all the podcasts with these as an immersive experience, those original stories translated into podcast with actors. Yeah, this is like all the way. I mean, it's the trend right now. But of course, that involves a lot of production, a lot of money. The average creator is not creating that kind of podcast. They are invited or hired to be part of those productions. And also AI, we talked about it. AI, it's gonna be huge. Now you can have different voices. You can have your co-host, like made by AI.
Oh my
you
God, there's
can,
probably going to be just AI podcasts where they just tell a prompt like, have these two people discuss this topic. These are their
Totally.
opinions, and then it's just two AI avatars talking
Well,
to each
what I
other.
think is interesting is the
Totally.
dubs. You ever see those dub previews where it's like a cut from a clip English, cut from a clip Spanish,
Yeah.
then like different languages, and
Yeah.
it looks like the person's speaking
Yeah,
the
they
language.
changed the lips.
oh, yeah, that's a new meta feature.
So do you think
That's cool.
that, like, let's say Rogan, for example, is going to potentially pop up in other countries and blow up even more? And then would your business potentially be like international in what you could do? Or
For example, I told you about Relatos de la Noche. Relatos de la Noche is the number 11 podcast in the world, and it's a Spanish-speaking podcast. The host, Uriel, he doesn't speak English at all. So at Sonoro, the company I was working for, we cloned his voice, and we launched Tales of the Night in English. And it's amazing. And it's now in the charts now. It's now in the charts as it's one of the top 100 podcasts.
it's not a physical product, which is amazing. You don't have to ship it. You don't have to manufacture
Nothing.
it. You just literally just
We
download
just
an app
trained,
and boom, there it is.
Exactly. We just trained the AI motor to learn his inflections and the way he talked, because not only it
That's
was
so crazy.
cloning the voice, but cloning the voice in another language. So, of course, AI, it's amazing. I mean, I'm a fan, and I have something to say. I've heard it, I think, in a podcast, I can remember, but it says that AI is not gonna replace humans. Humans that know how to use AI are gonna replace the ones that don't. And I think it's, I love it.
Another mic drop moment from Diana.
In Mexico, is it Spotify, YouTube, Apple, the main same kind of platforms they find podcasts, or is there something else down
They
there?
are the same, and not only Mexico. I would like to divide the market between U.S. and Latin America, including Mexico, because they follow the same trends, the same behavior of the users, right? So it's different. Here in the U.S., Apple Podcast is the #1 podcast platform when people consume podcasts, and in Latin America, it's Spotify by far.
Nice.
So they are doing, Apple Podcast is doing a huge effort to acquire that market. And how they doing that? They're doing that by launching their originals, by trying to partner with the biggest podcasts out there to do collaborations. They offer different. For a podcaster, it's huge to have features in the different platforms. When you open your Spotify or your Apple Podcast app and some suggestions there, right? That's huge. So that's what they're doing right now to acquire more the market over there. They are partnering with podcasters and putting the podcasters in the homepage in exchange for mentions. It's, as I said, collaboration is key. So go ahead and collaborate with other podcasters, guys, because that's the way to grow. Even Apple Podcasts, Spotify are doing that.
Okay, so I'm curious. This is like a random question. I'll come back to our course.
He's going to weave.
I'm going to weave real quick. So if we wanted to get into the Latin market, would I start like a different, so I'd have a dub version? Like would I have a different channel and have a Spanish version? Or it will just automatically be translated, and then if I promoted it on, say, Instagram, should I start a second Instagram where the clips are dubbed or either in subtitles for Spanish? Because I imagine you don't want to keep posting on your main page and then like clip,
Yeah, I
then a
assume
dub
you need
clipped
another.
or a
I assume you need another page that's Spanish.
Yes, I think so, because that's tricky. That's maybe for you guys, it's just a question that is popping up right now because of the trend of the AI translation and everything.
Well, I just feel like if we could kind of tap into, like if no one's really trying from the U.S. to push into the Latin market, two white guys, why not try to
Hey,
into-
white. I'm white-ish.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that that's the question
Two
for
American guys.
the Latino creators. Should I post it in English or in Spanish? Should I put it on the same feed,
Yeah.
separate feed? That's the question. I mean, promise you, it's so hard. But I think algorithms really don't like you to use different languages in the same feed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just make like a different
Until
account.
now, because nothing's set in stone.
Okay.
And with the new meta feature where you're gonna post your content in your language and it's gonna be automatically not only translated but transformed into the user's preferred language, maybe the game is gonna change. I mean, we don't know, right?
And then you really only have to post in one language, and then someone
Exactly.
in Mexico can see it in Spanish, someone in Germany can see it in German.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's
cool.
gonna be it's a beta right now, and it's
Okay.
gonna be implemented little by little in different countries. So I will wait. I will wait to see how this develops.
Yeah, I think something interesting is really happening, and I think it's like this election's really showing it because, I don't know, probably know the result in a couple weeks when everyone's listening to this episode. But for example, Trump going on Rogan's podcast, that is like you get to really see the impact that has. That's probably that interview among any other thing almost is like the last leg from the mainstream media being pulled out. Like that, I think, has created so much momentum that podcasts have finally completely taken over the ability of being the people that you go to for information. Like that is like, oh, he's going to be on the podcast versus he's going to be on CNN or this politician is going to be on this thing. And now it's like it's almost like they've lost all their power because now you can go to someone with so much influence, and because of that, podcasters, I think, are going to grow even more influential, and it's going to grow even more because of what's happening right now. Like, so this cycle, the amount of podcasts Trump was on, and no one's ever seen a politician in any election be interviewed that many times, like so many comedians. Like you have over 20 hours of long form conversations where you've never had that in the history of interviewing a politician ever. Ever.
Totally.
And it's game changer. And that,
love
I
it.
think, anytime more elections or anything come out, that's where people are going to go to create influence in whatever they're trying to do, whether it's get a vote or whatever it is. that's like, I think the shift is like a big shift has just happened because of what's happening right
Yes,
now.
totally agree with you, and I love that you're bringing this up, because they know, and Kamala was call her daddy
Call her daddy,
with
yeah.
Alice Cooper. So both of them know that there's no other way to reach a certain powerful audience than going on a podcast. Gen Zs I don't think they even have a TV. I mean,
Yeah, not
they-
for news. Also,
No.
no one watches. You don't turn on your TV and there's like cable or any of those
No, they
channels.
watch on
You
their
have
phones.
subscriptions
Yeah.
to Paramount, Netflix, Amazon. So how are you even going to be influenced
Well,
by it?
I feel like it's a matter of time until the big news corporations, because now they're realizing podcasts where it at. They're going to do podcasts, or they're
They're
going
doing
to
it
buy
already.
podcasts.
They're doing it already. NBC,
Bill O'Reilly started his
MSNBC,
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
all of them. They're creating their own originals, or they have their podcast version of the morning shows, or they are partnering with podcasters to be, we were talking about content acquisition.
Yeah.
That is the new thing for like legacy media corporations, is acquiring podcasters or content creators to be part of their programming, because they know they have, they're reaching certain audience that they would never be able to reach.
And what's
Yeah.
most exciting is, say you have that 3-hour conversation Trump did with Rogan, you get people in Mexico, Japan can listen to, like, imagine if we could listen to Putin in a 3-hour podcast with Rogan. You're like, I didn't even know this side of this individual. It's so,
True.
and it's going to, I think, bring a lot of people together. Like, you're going to start to understand cultures a lot better if you're willing to like listen and dive into these podcasts. But that's most exciting. Like,
I
I would
love
love
it.
to listen to two dudes that were like us in Japan that had like a 2-hour podcast and just be like, what the fuck's going on in their world? Right?
Exactly.
And
It's-
see who they interview and see what they like and the way they
Totally.
joke and stuff.
And there's no filter. There's no one else
Yeah.
telling their story. They're telling their story by themselves.
Yeah.
And another thing that you mentioned about the candidates, but also for elected officials, podcast has been lately, in the last 3 years, the preferred space to connect with their with the people,
Yeah.
right? They represent, to connect with people they represent. And I think that's something that podcasters need to leverage as well, right? Having them and being part of that change of narrative, instead of going through these big corporations, have a real conversation, honest conversation with their elected officials.
Totally. So, what is it like working with you? Someone's listening to this, and they're like, "Oh shit, I gotta call her. I gotta talk to her." What's the process of working with you? How does it usually work?
Oh, thank you for asking this question, because, as I said, I wanted to make a bigger impact. And of course, I learned so much working in the corporate world, but I think my passion is connecting people. So right now at Elan Talent, I'm connecting talent and brands to make meaningful impact and growth. And what I do is what I'm doing with you guys, just sharing my expertise, guiding these creators or podcasters to get better deals with brands, helping these brands to get the influence they need, the reach they're looking for, and win-win scenarios for everyone.
That's amazing.
Cool. How do people find you?
I'm on Instagram as Diana Martinez ATX and at elantalent.com.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Diana, for coming.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, guys. I had a great time, and you guys need to listen to this podcast. It's amazing. I love these guys, and they're gonna make waves, more waves in the podcast space.
She's already pimping us out. It's great.
All right.
That was amazing. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.